I'm going to continue with my reviews of all the original Star Trek episodes in broadcast order. Today we're going to look at Where No Man Has Gone Before, which is one of my favorites. I'm Joe, and this is Starbase Nerdtron. So this was the third episode that was broadcast, but it was actually the second one that was made. This was the second pilot for the show because NBC didn't like the first pilot, The Cage, and which we'll get to eventually. And Lucille Ball apparently persuaded them to go for another pilot, and they swapped out the captains. This is the first one with Shatner as Captain Kirk, and some of the other characters. Spock notably did survive the transition from one pilot to the next, and a couple of the other characters too. This is one of my favorite episodes. It's very different stylistically because it was a pilot episode. The uniforms were different, as you can see. They lacked the black collar. They were like velour. The emblem, the delta is much smaller. The rank insignia is different. And just like the man trap, they have the old style lasers instead of the it's kind of a mix. You'll see, but they have some like the big rifle thing. It's a fantastic episode. It's got Sally Kellerman, who played Hot Liz Houlihan in the MASH movie. She plays Dr. Elizabeth Daner. The Gary Lockwood, who played Frank Poole in 2001: A Space Odyssey. He's in here as Gary Mitchell, who's the protagonist of the story. The Enterprise is sent to the edge of the galaxy where there's an energy barrier. The only ship that had gone there before, I believe, was the SS Valiant, and they get this recorder buoy that gives them a warning that they can't quite interpret, and they go to the edge of the galaxy. There's a big, flashes and energies and stuff like that. And Gary Mitchell is kind of knocked unconscious, and when he wakes up, his eyes are glowing silver. And they have a really cool effect at the end of the first act where the scene fades out, and all you see are the eyes just glowing there for a second, and then it goes black. It's really cool, really well done. Um, and what happens during the episode is it's obvious that something's going on with Mitchell. He seems to be able to manipulate objects with telekinesis. He has ESP. He's seeing things that are not present. He can kind of see things that are on the other side of the ship, and he's also becoming more arrogant as he goes along. And they put this kind of echoing, booming on his voice as he gets more powerful, and basically he's become some sort of superhuman with all these psionic abilities, and he's gradually taking over the ship, and they have to decide what to do with him. Kirk, because he's Kirk's best friend, he doesn't want to hurt him or do anything to him. But Spock, after the logical one, is arguing that we need to stop him now before we can't stop him at all. And they decide to strand him on Delta Vega, which is a lithium cracking station. They don't really explain what that means. It's just something like this automated factory where ore ships come every 20 years. And so, they're working to get him down there. They're going to knock him out with a sedative, and then take him down there and strand him basically on the planet all alone. Now, Dr. Daner is kind of becoming more and more sympathetic to him and his plight. She's arguing that just because he has these powers doesn't necessarily make him dangerous, and you kind of get the impression that she's falling for him, and they do make him they do get him down there, and they by this time they have vastly underestimated just how powerful he is. He telekinetically kills Mr. Kelso, who's down there on the planet hooking up some equipment, strangles him with a wire and from his cell, and then it turns out that he can just wave his hand and the cell door disappears. And he goes out of the cracking station, and Dr. Daner is there, and he brings her with him, and you see that her eyes have also turned. So she's also been affected by this phenomenon. And there's a really good, this you can tell this is a very, very different pilot than the original The Cage. And again, we'll get into more of a comparison of the two when I get to The Cage. But there's a lot more action. There's a fight scene at the end where Mitchell and Kirk are fighting. He gets the trademark, the shirt's torn. And there's some really great dialogue about, when Kirk is trying to persuade Dr. Daner that Gary Mitchell will always try to dominate her, and he's going to be a jealous god. And one of the interesting things, it's probably a production error because they hadn't settled on Kirk's middle name yet, but Mitchell makes just like waves his hand and there's a grave, and the tombstone says James R. Kirk, and um, it's really great because that's not his normal middle initial. It's T normally, but it's probably an error, and they just hadn't settled on it yet. But you can the fans have kind of retconned that into saying that Mitchell wasn't really such a great friend as he thought because he didn't even know his middle initial. So it's one of those things. Kirk's got the big phaser rifle and he shoots it at Mitchell, and it temporarily drains him of his powers, so they're able to throw some punches. And then at the very end, just as he's about to finish off Mitchell, he hesitates because he's his friend, and then Mitchell's eyes turn, and then he becomes godlike and everything. And Kirk eventually saves himself by not shooting directly at Mitchell, but at a big boulder, and Mitchell falls into the grave, and a big boulder crushes him, and that's the end of it. And then Mitchell has also killed Dr. Daner, who tried to help Kirk during the fight. It's much different than the original pilot. It is for my money, I love all the little different stylistic differences. The uniforms. They have gooseneck lamps on the bridge and stuff. It's just I love seeing that, and it gives the impression, even though it was a production thing, it wasn't intentional, but it does give the impression that Starfleet technology is evolving over the years, right? We're seeing something that happened a few years ago, and the Enterprise and Starfleet have been refit since then. And I love that kind of, it gives you the impression that it's a living, breathing universe. And we're only in the third episode, and you get all this stuff. So it's definitely one of my favorites. Gary Mitchell, Lockwood just does such a wonderful job acting. Obviously, I mean, he's in 2001: A Space Odyssey. He's got the acting chops. Sally Kellerman is obviously a great actress. So it's very, very well done. It's cool to see the evolution from here into what we think of as the normal Star Trek series. And it's just one of my favorites. So do tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. What do you think of this episode? What are your memories of watching it when you were a kid or today? Love to hear from you. Hope you're all having a great time, and I will talk to you all later.